Welcome back, everyone. This is a Conscious and Aligned conversation, and I am joined with my sister friend, my colleague, my business partner, my co-conspirator. Alishea Sutton is everything, and it's so wild that we get to do life together and that you are joining me for this Conscious and Aligned conversation. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you for having me. I told you you needed your own show. Glad you listened. Like she said, my name is Alishea Sutton, social work graduate student, partner, mom to a fur baby. It's Mother's Day. I know that's not easy for everybody, but it's a day. Um, what else? Seiko fellow, Black Radical Scholars co-founder, and whatever else comes about. I
That's
do.
right. Our hands are open, right? We are ready and willing and open for what the divine has in store for us. I love it.
Future millionaire.
Right?
Oprah.
That's right. Would you say millionaire?
Yes, future millionaire.
That's
Gonna
right.
meet Oprah at some point.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I love it. So yes, all of these things. And yeah, we do recognize, so we are recording on Mother's Day. So Alishea is taking time out of her Mother's Day celebration to spend time with me and you all that are listening to the recording or joining us live, because what we're going to talk about is really important. And so we do recognize, she and I both made a post on our personal Facebook pages today about how this is a challenging day for many. And so I just want to reiterate that this may be a day of celebration for you, and this may be a day of great loss or grief for you. And all feelings, emotions, thoughts around the day are totally understandable and 100% valid. So wherever you land on the spectrum of emotions, feelings, thoughts, we are holding space with you. And the real reason that I wanted to chat with Alishea today was because of this being the first Mother's Day that Ahmaud Asbury's mom is having without him, and also Sean Reed's mother is having without him. And to that end, we're going to take a moment of silence for both men who lost their lives, at the hands of white supremacy and racism in this country. It is a widespread problem. It is not only relegated to the University of Michigan. It's there too. It's not just relegated. Freudian slip my ass. It's not just relegated to the United States. It is a problem that is widespread in nature across all the countries, most of the countries in this on this globe, in this planet. And so we want to take a moment of silence to honor the lives of these men who had their lives violently stolen from us. Thank you. So to that end, many of us ran, walked, biked, perhaps swam for 2.23 miles on Friday, May 8th.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
May 8th, in celebration and remembrance of Ahmaud Asbury's what would have been his 26th birthday. You see, he was murdered back in February, on February 23rd, which is why the 2.23 miles came to be, in Georgia, at the hands of two white men who were former law enforcement, a father and son combination of killers, and they took his life violently. And a third person was complicit in the murder by recording it. So this video finally came to light this week, and those men were finally charged with his murder. Georgia does not have hate crime laws in place, which is something that many of us are looking to change. And so I ran 1.4 miles um, because it's really cold in Michigan right now, unseasonably cold. And I have lived with lupus for a decade now. And as part of that, I have Raynaud's syndrome. And so cold is really hard for me. It's very painful. And so I didn't last that long. I couldn't continue. And so I finished my 2.23 miles. I ended up riding 5.8 miles in his honor on my Peloton bike. And Alishea and I, along with our other family member, scholar, fellow scholar, colleague, co-conspirator Justin, are on a group text message. And Alishea rode her Peloton after I had finished my rides. And she texted us that it was really challenging, and she didn't know that it would be that challenging and emotional for her. And so I wanted to explore that with you, Alishea. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience for you and why it was so emotional?
Sure. So, like all day, I waited like into the last minute. It was like you said, it was cold outside. I am not a fan of cold, but I still wanted to do something in Ahmaud's honor. And so I'm like, I have my Peloton. Let me just like hop on, do the 2.23 on my own, and then like get on an actual ride, and do that later. And so I got on, plugged my headphones in, and I'm like, all right, 2.23, like that's what you're looking for. And I'm like, what the hell? Like it just hit me. I'm like, the first thought in my head was like, did he know that was gonna be the last time he would be
Mhm,
leaving his house? And I was just like flooded with emotion. Like, do we know? Like, did he have a good feeling? Did he
mhm,
feel like anything was off? Did he forget his keys? Like,
mhm,
I think of like that Benjamin Button sequence where they talk about like time and like how our actions like impact somebody else's actions. I'm like, I wonder if he was just like it was another day to him, if he just had like a gut feeling that something was off. Like I don't like what was going through his mind when he like walked out of his door, locked the door behind him, and like started on his run. Was this just like another run? And then I'm like, how often we just leave our homes without even like
mhm,
thinking that's possible, like our normal activities. Like I have to go to the grocery store later. Who knows what's gonna happen? Like anything can happen, but we take so much for granted. And I think that's like where it came from. Like for his life to be stolen like that for something that he did on a regular basis was just very upsetting to me. And I think about like my partner, like he works out a lot. He'll like go and run. We live in a predominantly white neighborhood. We're new, so like there are residences around us, but we live like in an apartment building. And these people don't know us. And like I took the dog and my son like in the neighborhood and not even thinking twice about it, like, oh, they're just gonna have to deal with it because like I'm here. Um, but it's like we don't really think about, I guess, like our mortality. Um, and how just walking out the door can like really be our last time, but also just hearing like his mom having to hear the news of like her son. And I wrote Alex's ride, I think after that, and that was just another mess. But I did keep it together for that, and just hearing how he was like, his mom's gonna have to celebrate Mother's Day without him, and no child should have to do that. I was just like, oh my gosh. but it's like it was senseless, and we're honoring this person who none of us have, well, very few of us have met, and yet we have a connection and a shared identity, and it could easily be my son, my partner's friends, frat brothers, cousins,
Mm-hmm.
just doing like just going about your day in life, and it's interrupted because of ignorance and ego. And that can like go into like a number of things, but just like this man I've never met who is now a part of my life
Mm-hmm.
because his life was stolen. And it definitely impacts like the trauma of like yet another Black person in America, lives being stolen. And then you see posts about like the group on Facebook, and they're like, well, he didn't comply with their simple commands. First of all, you're not currently law enforcement, and you're not currently in the act of something. So you the audacity.
Yeah. The audacity of the caucasity. That's exactly what it is.
Exactly.
Because
Like for
he
you
didn't
to
owe
like
you anything.
he didn't owe you an
He didn't
explanation.
need to comply with anything. He was jogging. You are
Exactly.
nobody but another private citizen. And I wish somebody would walk up on me and ask me to comply with something when you're
I'm
not
not
law
gonna do it.
enforcement.
Who are you?
Who
I'm
are
not gonna
you?
do it. I'm not gonna do it. And you ambush me? Oh, we
Oh
really gonna have a
no.
problem.
Mm-mm.
So
Mm-mm.
yeah, I would have fought for my life also. But you like, well, they didn't comply with his. You're not currently law enforcement. You called 911. You couldn't even let them know what he was doing wrong. It's just you felt in your mind that you had the right, but y'all got these rights in America screwed up real. Y'all got them messed up. You don't have the right to take somebody's life because you feel a certain way. If that was the case, I could just go around slapping people, but I don't do that. I want to sometimes, but that's
Same.
like because there are people like my partner always tells me, like when we call the police, we give them, we then rely on the police to handle the situation. Like that's why we call them, because it's not in our hands anymore. We call the police to act on our behalf. That's why you call 911, sir, right? Because you wanted somebody to act on your behalf. And then
Exactly.
and then instead of waiting, you decided to take it into your own
Well,
hands.
because
Like
there was no actual criminal behavior. And so
none.
that leads me to, you mentioned, identities, and you and I spoke with your partner Brian, who is active law enforcement. So he is actually a police officer today,
Mm-hmm.
currently. And he had the police called on him
Mm-hmm.
recently on Monday, actually, so almost a week ago. He had the police called on him by a white woman who was in the vestibule using the ATM, and she should have just finished using the ATM, finished that up, and got the hell out of there if she was so scared. Yet she chose to spend time calling 911 with pepper spray or mace in her hand. And because Brian was wearing a mask, as he should have been, in compliance with
Mm-hmm.
CDC regulations, and there was another white woman next to him or behind him waiting in line for the ATM, and she was also wearing a mask, as she
Mm-hmm.
should have been, right? The caller, the Karen of the situation, she was not wearing a mask.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much that we can unpack with that, and yet I'm not going to go there because we want to center this story on parents raising Black children and what that means. So we've already been here where you have been in a situation where you're hearing from your partner that I had the police called on me. And that could have ended differently than it did. Thankfully, it was
Mm-hmm.
okay because the police officer that was called to scene, ended up going on scene, was a reasonable one
Mm-hmm.
and asked the right questions and totally showed up in the right way, professionally, empathetically, compassionately, understandingly. That said, you experienced that trauma, right? And then we talked through it through
Mm-hmm.
another conscious and aligned conversation. And now we're hearing towards the end of the week about Ahmaud and
Mm-hmm.
Sean, and you are the mother of Black children, Black boys,
Mm-hmm.
actually. So I want to hear from you directly. So if you're listening to this and you are the mother of Black children, drop a comment. If you are not the mother of Black children, I'm not going to say I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to hear from you right now, because I want to center these women who are, or these parents, I should say, that are parenting Black children in terms of what they have to do to the best of their abilities. Because like you said, Alishea, yes, broadly, we never know. Mm-hmm. September 11th, it was a Tuesday. Some folks had just started their new jobs on Monday and they did not return. Mm-hmm. And that was broad. It knew no color, truly, right? It knew no gender. And yet many of us do leave the home and we come back. And that's a gift. That said, many of us that live in Black skin, we leave the home and it's precarious at best. We're not sure what's going to happen because we're not allowed to call the police for help. We're not allowed to break down on the side of the road. We're not allowed to jog. We're not allowed to sell water as 8-year-olds. We're not allowed to
be in our homes and protect ourselves.
Homes and protect ourselves with the correct permits to carry our own weapons, because the Second Amendment does apply to us as well. Mm-hmm. We are not allowed to be at parks. We're not allowed to just be,
breathe.
Go to Starbucks, breathe, sell rolled cigarettes, have Skittles in our hands. These are all scenarios where folks were killed. Okay, Black people were killed. I want to be explicit. Because this is not a space for all lives matter, because we already know that. The reason the hashtag Black Lives Matter exists is because Black lives don't matter. Mm-hmm. Ahmaud was murdered 70-something days ago. As of Friday, it was 75. So 78 days ago, he was murdered. His killers, thugs and thieves of life, were just charged a couple days ago. 3 days ago. So if Black lives actually mattered, it wouldn't have happened in the first place, likely. And if it did happen, they would have been, considering there's a video of it that just got leaked, they would have already been charged prior to COVID taking over all of our lives. So, Alishea, as a Black parent and as a parent of Black children, what are some of the things that you have advised your children based on their age? Because part of this is now we are disrupting our own children's innocence. White kids can be as innocent as they want to. They can roam freely. They can ride their bikes freely. They're not advised by their parents to do certain things besides just, oh, listen to the officer. They're here to help. Mm-hmm. Is that what you've told your children?
Yeah, so my son, Donovan, who's 12, is a very literal person. So what he says is what he means. And we've had to kind of talk to him about the way that he would talk to law enforcement if something were to ever happen to him, like if he got pulled over, just to pretty much, do what the officer says. Don't try to not even defend yourself, but just like whatever they say, listen until you can get to a phone to call my partner. And then we'll handle it from there, just because like we don't want him to get beat or hurt or murdered. We had him when They See Us came out. We did watch like the first couple of episodes with him and discussed it, because he was in private school from kindergarten to 5th grade, and then 6th grade year we moved him to public school, but it's like in a suburban area. Mm-hmm. And while he's intelligent, I don't want him to be under the like assumption that he's still safe, because I'm like, the first time he comes home because somebody called him an N-word, like I don't even know how I'm going to react. And I've like prepared him for that. Like, do know that there are people, like your friends may be fine, but there are people who are going to look at you and judge you based off of the color of your skin. And so we've done like history lessons on like Black history in America. He's learned like when we had the shelter in place and we were homeschooling. He did like a whole week on a PBS special um, on like the slave trade and African Americans in the U.S. We did poetry reading once. Um, just because like especially in school they only teach about like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. if you're lucky. And I'm like, there are so many more people than that. And also, you need to understand how our ancestors got to this country, what they went through, and what we're still going through because of capitalism. And so, I have him like he has an anti-racist book. He's reading like the kids version or the youth version of Just Mercy right now. This is all just to kind of prepare him, like people, like especially based off of like my personal experiences with being in white spaces. Like they may smile in your face, but they'll also try to like hold you back and try to like make you conform to what you want to be. And I want him to be an individual, but then also it's just like twofold. So like you have the like white America, but then also Black America, where it's like having to prove your blackness, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I did have to tell him like people don't define your blackness, like that's a part of who you are, because you know people want to loop, and Black and white people want to loop Black kids into, oh, they all listen to rap music, oh, they all play sports, and he doesn't do either. So like that doesn't make you less than. And also know that your skin color is going to threaten somebody. Like at this point he's probably like a couple centimeters taller than me at 12, and he's going to keep growing, and he's going to be tall. And though he's kind, people don't know that, and they won't know it upon looking at him if he's out in public with just if he's by himself.
Right. Well, and the thing is too, data supports that Black children are often thought of as older than they actually are, whereas white children. And so if you feel like you're being left out of this conversation because you're neither Black nor white, or you're both, I hear you. And also we have to talk in explicit terms. We have to be honest with ourselves. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, because this is my program. So if you don't want to hear the truth, this is not the place for you. You are welcome. Yes. And also I am created at the risk of losing people in my life. I need to tell the truth. I'm a disruptive storyteller. So if you are not ready for that, I feel you. I wasn't either 5 years ago. And look where I am now, you know? So really, Black children are suspended more often than white children. They are disciplined more often than white children in schools. They are mistreated or put in special education when that isn't actually what is necessary. They are put in remedial courses and are tracked to be in a certain track, really, like educationally, which then perpetuates, thank you, perpetuates the income and wealth gap that exists in this country. So all of these things are connected. As you all know, we have a racism problem, and we also have a connecting the dots problem. Whereas it is very easy for me to connect the dots, I think it's very challenging for others to connect the dots. And also, denial is not only in Egypt, it exists pretty broadly and is very common, unlike common sense, which ain't that common. So all that to say, you are teaching your son, who is brilliant, by the way, who has a lot to offer, how he can do his best to navigate interacting with folks that would want him to no longer be a part of our lives, right?
Mm.
And how does that weigh heavily on you? How does that feel for you as a parent?
It is scary, it's troubling. Just because like I know the conversations that my parents had. So my parents grew up like during civil rights, so they are not trusting of white people at all. And then I went through a period of time where I'm like, well, they're all not that bad. And now I'm at a point in my life where like I'm questioning everything and everybody. Um, just because I feel like at this point we are under the delusion that things are better because we've had a black president, even though his family was the way they talked about him. Like I read or audio, listened to like Becoming, and the way that they experienced like just hearing things in the media, the way they talked about his wife and his children.
Disgusting.
Be like no words, like you belong under a rock and just stay there because clearly you don't want to engage with society. Like the disrespect that he experienced in the 2000s, like we are not as far along as people
Yeah.
think we are, not even on paper. We did a lot of work in school, and we just had to talk about maternal mortality, and we had to talk about it. And somebody brought up like if white women were going through this and these rates were increased and they were having like these pregnancy related conditions, these bills will be passed. Like half of them are just sitting there still, and not made into law. Or they have like committees to do it, to kind of track things. Like it's fine that you're tracking that they're dying, but what are you doing about them living? And even just like living in a country where we're reactive and not proactive is, I think, why like as a parent I have to like, I'm trying to be like proactive instead of like waiting till something happens. Like no, this may happen because people can't be trusted. That's going to be a shirt one day, like y'all just can't be trusted.
Y'all cannot be trusted.
You
I
can't be
said it.
trusted. um and it's not saying like some people aren't trustworthy, but if you look at motives, and we live in a very selfish society, um, and being a parent now is hard. So I think I do shelter like my son in some ways. Like there are some things I won't let him see on TV, but then in other ways I'm like, this is reality, and we got to deal with it. Like we live in Ohio. Uh, um, and culturally, it's not like it's missing. People think like it's progressive. I'm like, listen, I
Who
have to
does?
remind people. I have to
What,
remind people.
Ohio? People think that it's progressive?
So I have to remind people, like when I started school in Ann Arbor, that they was like, oh, Ann Arbor. This I'm like, listen, I live in Ohio. You guys are but like some of the things that I see, you're above the curve. Like we have a small pocket of people here who are doing things, but for the rest of it, like we ascribe, we generally, not everyone, um we ascribe to white supremacy tough here. Like we judge our we like we judge our success and base our success off of, if white people have it, then we should have this too. And then, did you listen to the verses last night with Jill Scott and Erica Badu? So there was a part where I forgot what they were talking about. I wrote it down, but they were just talking about like why do we want this? Like Erica was like, why do we want this American dream? Like I don't like, that's not what I do. Like I'm like internally getting myself together and all this other stuff can go. And I'm like, why do we want this American dream? Why is this like great? Why is this a thing to be achieved? Like, what does that even mean in 2020 anymore? I don't understand. So I think it's hard because, you know, you still have people that want the American dream. They want like this materialistic life, but then I'm like, I feel like we're abandoning ourselves. So
Mhm.
it's like, okay, how do I teach my son how to not abandon himself
Mhm.
to try to attain something that's not attainable? Um, and to still be true to himself. And I'm still trying to figure that out. And I think like if you don't have parents or people in your life who can like help you reach to get there, then it's hard. And then also, you know, being a parent, not trying to put my wishes onto him, to not try to live through him or not try to like plan out his life. Like I'll help him out, like work with him to plan it. But I'm not gonna tell him like, oh, you should definitely like this is a job for you and that's the only job you can have. Um and just to be, I want him to like take more initiative and to have pride of like who he is, to know where he came from, and to not be like don't be like, yeah, Black people go through some stuff in this country. We've been going through some stuff in this country, but don't be ashamed of that,
Sure.
because although I know some of us don't love the word resilient, like that's who we are. Like you try to knock us down, but we're still going to come back, and that's your bloodline. Like that middle passage, I don't think in 2020 you have put me on the boat, and I'm a last. Like that's
That's real.
resilience, and yet no one has addressed our trauma and the way that it
Mhm.
needs to be addressed. And so, like teaching him like this is your history,
Mhm.
and then balancing all that and recognizing like the trauma that we're still going through media, because
Mhm.
watching
Mhm.
TV and watching the news is very traumatic. Um, this man being a Black kid in America right now, like no, you're not about to like. I don't want him to limit himself. I want him to be proud, like be proud of being Black. Not saying that you're like better than anybody else, but be proud of who you are
Totally.
and don't let anybody tell you what you're not.
Yeah,
So I have to
absolutely.
like keep instilling that in him. And also we're up against a system that doesn't want us to succeed.
No, not at
And
all.
in spite of that, do something.
Right. Well, and the thing is that it reminds me, and I don't remember who came up with it so that I can attribute it correctly, is like they thought they buried us and they didn't realize we were seeds. And so Black people historically on various continents have been able to thrive, certainly survive, and more often than not thrive. And the thriving looks different for everybody, right? So there are some folks that want to purchase a home, lay down roots. Some folks are more travelers, I would say, perhaps nomadic in nature. And so they like to float around from different, like, place to place. I don't have any judgments around anything in terms of what it is that someone would like to do uh, for their own lives, you know, provided it's not an encroachment on someone else's life. And that is
Mm-hmm.
where we run into problems, because
Mm-hmm.
folks assert their rights and they don't understand that their rights are encroaching upon somebody else's rights. So someone's right to be pro-life, even though I don't buy that, because I don't think overwhelmingly pro-life folks are actually pro-life, because
Mm-hmm.
those are not the people that ran or walked or did anything thinking about Ahmaud at all. Uh, you know, those are people who want to have dominion and power over someone else's uterus,
Mm-hmm.
over someone else's life. And I don't buy that at all. You know, so as we're thinking about how we relate to other people and how, you know, something you mentioned was trauma. And that's something that I want to highlight to folks that are not familiar with that. So I am a mental health professional, I'm a clinician. I am also certified as a trauma informed, trauma sensitive yoga teacher. I'm also a yoga therapist. So trauma resides in the body. Our body remembers the trauma. One thing that I didn't highlight this year, because I was thinking about and doing advocacy around Ahmaud's murder. I want to call it what it is. I was involved in a really bad car accident 4 years ago on Thursday, May 7th, 2016. It was a really bad car accident. In fact, it was a rollover accident. Like, the trailer that I was towing flipped my small SUV over. My roof, right, ended up being like on the side. The passenger side, or the driver's side, ended up being the floor. And I was going, where was I going? I was going west on the freeway. When it was all said and done, I was facing east, and my truck was flipped over, right? And I experienced shock. I experienced physical injury, certainly emotional injury, psychological, mental, economic injury. And all of that to say, for whatever reason, my life was spared. And it was interesting because when I came back through, and I was in Vegas for a month before moving to Michigan that summer, the first time I drove past the scene of the accident, I was listening to the song that was playing on my Spotify was Kanye West, What Doesn't Kill You, his song Stronger. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? And I just wept because I was like, wow, And to this day, I don't use pillows on my bed because of the trauma I've experienced over the years. That accident was like the last one where it made it like, I hadn't used pillows for a long time, actually, because I was involved in another bad car accident. Someone hit me from behind in January 2012. And so it's a cumulative effect, right? And the trauma has an accumulative effect, whether it's physical or emotional trauma. Mm-hmm. And this resides in my body somewhere, as it resides in Alishea's body, as it resides in your body in terms of trauma. And those of us that experience racism on a very regular basis and have to contend with that as well, we experience trauma. So this is harmful for us from a physical standpoint, certainly an emotional and psychological standpoint, definitely an economical standpoint, right? So all of these are harms being done. And how can you show up? If you are not someone who experiences racism, and racism and discrimination are different. So there is racial discrimination, and there's discrimination on the basis of gender, religion, etc. That said, if you are not someone who experiences racism, and reverse racism is not a thing, so I don't want to hear it. We're not going to even entertain it. It doesn't exist. How can you show up for others that do experience racism, right? So one of the things that Alishea and I were talking about is you can show up financially. You can show up financially. Venmo, Cash App is a thing. Buying someone a cup of coffee is a thing. Supporting someone's business is a thing that can be helpful. Speaking out, using your platform to speak out and raise awareness on certain issues and topics that maybe your group of folks, your community is unaware of. Like, so many folks have said, and I hear this, I am so embarrassed I didn't know that this was going on. I get it. Let your embarrassment fuel your action, because none of us knows everything. I was not this vocal 5 years ago, not even close. You know what I talked about 5 years ago? Essential oils and yoga, a lot. And you know what? That was benign, and that was easy for folks to digest. Mm-hmm. When I started talking about politics, I started losing friends. Wow. Right? When I started highlighting injustices, I started to lose friends. I'm okay with that. It clears the space for other folks, to whom are supposed to be in my community. Mm-hmm. What other ideas do you think would be helpful, Alishea, in terms of real support?
I think You covered them. Doing your own work and crediting people for the work that you find, having real conversations, and when you find information that is not in alignment with your reality, that's just your perception, and to remember that.
Yep. Because I can't tell you how many folks I've seen well, I talked to my friend who's a person of color, and she says that she feels fine with folks using the N-word.
Mm-mm.
I don't care.
We don't do
I'm
that.
telling you it's not okay. If you're not Black, you have no business using it. I don't even
And I don't
care.
even like
I don't even
using
care if
it.
Black people have given you the opportunity or the right to do it. You don't. You just don't.
Mhm.
And why would you want to? You're weird. I mean, really though, like, why would you want to?
Right.
If it's harmful to one, it's harmful to one. That's enough.
Mhm.
The other thing that I hear is like people negating someone's lived experience. So one day, one woman who shall remain nameless, she said to me via a comment on Facebook that because she's older than me, clearly not wiser, simply older chronologically, that she has more lived experience than I do with racism. And she's white or white passing. She couldn't confirm that she wasn't white.
A mess.
A mess. I mean, the nerve, you know? So if someone is telling you their lived experience, if you're speaking with Alishea or someone who's like Alishea, she's a Black mother, right? Someone who's like me, a Black mama type, and I'm telling you, this is how it is. I don't need to hear you arguing with me because it's not your lived experience. I'm telling you how my life is.
Right.
I'm not saying how your life is, right? So that is something that we need to do a better job of like, I use this example with folks that are in the either the LGBTQ community or identify as disabled. You know, some people have said, oh, well, it's a person with a disability. And some folks have said, oh, well, I'm a disabled person. I go with whomever I'm speaking with.
Right.
How do you describe yourself? I'm going to go with that. You know why? It's not my fight. It's not my life. I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to describe you. It's like pronouns. You say you're them, you're them. It's super simple because it doesn't impact my life.
Right.
What it does do, though, is it helps me to actually really, from a live perspective, right? To come alongside someone in a way that honors them.
Right. And that's just being respectful. So my dad is Muslim, but he like converted to Islam when I was younger. And to this day, he has people who, like his family members still call him by his like birth name, even though like he goes by, so his first name is Joseph, like his birth name, and he goes by Yusuf. And people still call him Joseph. And it's so cute because so like during this quarantine, one of my high school Facebook friends made a post about her. No, I made a post about like this little girl. I shared it. So she was like writing letters and wrote like a letter to her postmaster, and like it just like went viral and everybody started spreading, like sharing the letters and writing letters to her. And so I like shared the post, and one of my high school friends was like, oh, like her kids do it too. We were laughing because like, oh, kids don't know how to like send and write letters anymore. But so I had my son do it. And I was like, why don't you write your granddad, your grandmother, like one of your friends, well, my grandmother, so his great grandmother and one of his friends. And I got like the letter. I showed him how to like do the return addressing like to the addressee. And I looked and he wrote to my dad, he wrote Yusuf on it. And I was like, he can do it. Yes, that's all he's known. But he knows that like that's not his like first name. But he still did it at 12. And you grown and can't respect. It's about respect and respecting how that person wants to be honored. And people just do not do that. It was like so touching. We still have to get stamps. I can mail it. But it was just like, he could do it, and y'all like you. That's so disrespectful to me.
It is
like
so.
and I watched like the Marsha P. Johnson documentary on Netflix, and her family was still calling her him, and I was like, okay, like
Marsha
that's
P.
if that's how, yeah, if that's how you want to remember her, cool. But like they're documenting this, and you're still like, well, he did this and he did that, and I'm like, you is the acceptance is not. It's more so, I think, for like that person, they take it upon us like, well, I can't accept it. Like, this ain't about you.
It's
This
not
is
about you.
their life
Mm-hmm.
and how like they want to live. It's not negative, and that person was
Exactly. It doesn't
allegedly
impact
like
you.
murder. Yeah, and it's just like we have a respect problem here, and
Yeah,
that's
we
what
should.
happened with the mod. They didn't respect this black. Well, he fit the description. Yeah, if you say a black man,
I mean,
hello,
but who else is always like we always fit the description. Like, I don't want to hear it. Y'all cannot be trusted. I'm not buying it. That is bullshit. Like, I'm gonna call it what it is, and you're right. We do have a respect problem. We have a racism problem. We have a connecting the dots problem. We have I'm a mind your business and not mind my own problem, right? So, like, to your point of your dad, his actual name is Yusuf, right? And folks calling folks by their dead name, using like misgendering people, using incorrect pronouns on purpose. All of this is violent behavior. So
mm-hmm,
violence does not only come in the form of hitting someone or,
mm-hmm,
striking someone or anything like in touch. It comes in all forms. And so we need to really monitor our behavior, especially when it doesn't actually impact us. It doesn't cost me anything to be kind to someone. It really
right,
doesn't. And I'm not talking about extending myself or extending grace to folks that are harming me and harming the ones that I love. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about one of my friends recently is transitioning. I'm not going to say what their name is, because it's not my story.
mm-hmm,
What I will say is that this person, I have updated their name in my phone. I use the correct pronouns and I support them, period. That's what it means, right? And it doesn't cost me anything to do the right thing and to treat folks with respect. So all that to say, Alishea, thank you so much for joining me today on this Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to you.
thank you, and happy Mother's Day to you, because you have that mothering spirit, and to your
Thank you so
nephews, your
much.
mother figure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And everyone who's listening, I so appreciate you. If you want to support these conversations, you can Venmo me at Chidimma or at Chidimma Ozor. Alishea and I are co-partners and co-founders for Black Radical Scholars. We have tons of t-shirts. We would love to not look at them. We would love to look at y'all wearing them. So we have an Etsy store called Black Radical Scholars. We have bags, canvas bags as well, that are like great reusable bags. And our t-shirts are sustainably made, and they are really comfortable, is what the feedback that folks say. So thank you for supporting us, and thank you for supporting this conversation. I really appreciate y'all, and we are going to wrap up right now. Stay well, wash your damn hands, and may we take care of ourselves and one another. Thanks for being here, y'all.